Our X-Files. Welcome to our X-Files Vault. Regular people talking about unexplained phenomena. UFOs. Ghosts. Cryptids. Hidden archaeology. Weird science. Our stories. Our takes. Our X-Files Vault.
Hey everyone, welcome to our X Vault. And tonight I have a special interview coming up shortly. A few days ago, I received an email from a woman claiming that she had a near-death experience when two hitmen tried to kill her. She's an exotic dancer. This happened in 2006, and it was the most meaningful event in this person's life. She's here tonight waiting outside. I want to have her on in a minute. She has a fascinating story, and it seems to me to involve something far more mysterious than a near-death experience. But I want to talk a little bit about my own beliefs first. I'm a science person. I can suspend disbelief for the sake of a good story. But for me to accept something as true or even likely true, I need to see scientific evidence. Even on a channel like this, it's scientific evidence that really takes me to a level of accepting something. I love a good ghost story. I'm willing to suspend disbelief for the sake of an alien encounter or a ghost or Bigfoot or whatever, just because I like a good story. But this is a serious person who is talking about a momentous event in her life. When I was going over the story, when I was listening to her talk about it, there were a couple of things that really stood out to me. One is the story didn't completely add up to me as something that fully made sense, but two, that she was completely telling the truth. She comes across as sane, as honest. She's not in any way crazy. And I liked her. She seemed very, very sweet and very believable. So how do you interpret a story like that? It's possible things happened exactly the way she claims they happened. It's also possible that her mind has misinterpreted something else. Now, before I started this channel, I'm not someone that tends to believe in some of the crazier parts of unexplained stories, whether it's Skinwalker Ranch or alien abductions or crop circles. I don't dismiss anything as possible, but those don't tend to be things that I believe as true. I can't really imagine that aliens fly across the universe just to abduct us from our bedrooms. And she's not claiming that. She's not even claiming this is an alien abduction. You'll hear her story when she talks about it. But one of the things that really makes this story stand out to me as something that wasn't just something she dreamed was there was a special witness. In the adjacent, she is in the living room when the story takes place, but in the bedroom was her 6-year-old son. And he experienced something very similar. So I'm going to bring her on in a second. And I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm just someone who started a channel because I thought it was going to be fun. But these things come up, and I want to treat her story and her with the respect that it deserves and that she deserves, and try to bring out a little bit of that story that maybe she hasn't thought of. Clearly, it's something that changed her life, and for the better. So I would never want to diminish that. But is there something stranger going on than even what she claims went on here? So let's go bring her in. Okay, here we have Sedona Dawn, and she has a very interesting story to tell. So why don't we just let her go right where she wants to start telling us the story leading up to events that happened on that night in 2006. Hi, Sedona.
Hi, how's it going?
Very good. Very good. So safe to say that this was the most meaningful event of your life?
Definitely
Impactful?
one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously you have a child, so that would, I'm sure that would be more important, but something that changed your life anyways.
Yeah, it was definitely what I would call a cataclysmic moment in my life for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So set the stage. I know you mentioned on the phone where, what kind of work you were doing at the time, and I know there was some circumstances at work that were creating some anxiety for you.
Well, what happened was I had started working at a strip club in December of 2004. And by April of 2005, I had met a customer there, and he was a very nice guy. His name was Ken, and he was very personable and friendly and fun. And he told me he was divorced with kids, and he moved into a new home by himself near his business on the other side of town. So he was he was in there. He was at the club I was working at to have some fun. And he'd come in periodically to see me, and he was asking me out. And at the time I was still with my son's father, and I for that reason I told him no. And it wasn't until August of 2005 when my son's father and I we had to call it quits. So I decided to give new love a chance. So I decided to give Ken an opportunity and, go out on a date with him because he just seemed like a really nice guy. So this was in August, so 2005. And shortly after we started seeing each other, I had a new customer come into my club, and his name was Derek. And right around the time Derek started coming in, the club I worked at also hired 3 new girls, and their names were Jules, Christina, and Jenna. And Derek would come in almost for every one of my shifts, and he seemed really interested. And he was saying things like, "Oh, you're the only one here I'd like to see, and I'm just here to see you." And those 3 girls would occasionally sit at our table with us, and he'd talk to them. And I'd say, "Well, what about the other girls?" He's like, No, I'm just here to see you." And I'm thinking, okay. And the 3 girls, they try to befriend me. And they were saying things like, "Derek really is in love with you, and he's really enamored, and, you should date him." And I told them, I'm like, "Well, I don't really date my customers." And they said, "Well, he really likes you." And Derek was married. And I told them, I said, "Well, I don't date married guys. And, and I certainly don't date guys for money. It's just, I like to keep everything all in the club. I'm not one to go out, on dates with guys for money. It's just, it crosses the line for me. I don't like doing that." So Derek would come in, and the girls would show up, and this was going on until I would say April of 2006. But I think it was November. It was November of 2005 that I decided to that I was moved into a new home down by the beach in the bay, and it was a really nice little home that was sort of located behind a larger home. And it was very private, and it was just a place where, we lived down the street from a playground, so it was a perfect place for my son and I to live. And after months of this going on with Derek and the girls trying to get me to go out with Derek, April 2006 rolled around, and I remember when one of the girls, Jules, and we were in a lap dance booth with Derek, and we were giving him a 2-girl dance. And I noticed how Derek was getting really frustrated over the fact that I wasn't going out with him, because he had spent months trying to get me out of the club with him, and I wouldn't do it. So I noticed he was getting frustrated because when we were giving him the dance, one of us was sitting next to him while the other danced. And he was grabbing one girl, the girl sitting next, he grabbed me, I was sitting next to him, and he flinged me off the couch, and he grabbed the other girl, Jules, and pulled her down next to him. And he was getting really physical, almost to the point of being violent. And at one point when I was dancing for him, he smacked me on my butt real hard. And the doormen weren't there to see it. I had to tell them about it later after the fact. But after that dance was over, Jules and I went back to the dressing room to put our money away and stuff. And she turns to me and she says, "Hey, thanks for having me there with you. It really helps me out." And I was like, "Oh, no problem." And she said, "Yeah, he's really in love with you." And I was like, "Well, did you notice how violent he was just getting?" I'm like, "I don't think I'd want to date a guy like that. He was just like, tossing us around a little bit and he smacked me hard. Like, did you not notice that?" And she said, "Oh, well, he's just really drunk. He's really in love with you." And I said, "Well, that's the other weird thing, is that the guy's married, but he's telling me that he's in love with me, like some girl at the club." I'm like, that doesn't really seem like he seems a little nutty, if you ask me. So one of the other girls in the dressing room, who was just one of my, coworkers, she said, "Well, maybe you should take a couple days off and distance yourself from him, and maybe this will drop him the hint." And I thought that was a good idea. So it was April 7th on a Friday, 2006. I decided to take the day off, and my son was in preschool, so I kept him home with me that day just so we could have the day together. And that night I went to bed, or either that day, before I went to bed, I got a call from one of my coworkers that day explaining how, Derek was there and he didn't seem happy because I was not there the way he expected me to be. And I thought, well, okay, well, he'll get over it. At least he's getting the message now that, I'm not interested in him in that respect. So my son and I went to bed that night. He was in his room and I always slept out in the living room on a fold out futon, and went to bed that night. It was the night of Friday, April 7th, 2006. And as I was sleeping, suddenly, actually it was the next morning. It was April 8th, 2006 at 4:51 in the morning. I was sleeping, and then all of a sudden I started hearing these really weird sounds, and they weren't sounds that came from outside or a physical realm. It felt like it was more coming from like inside my own mind, but from some other source. It was like I was the only one who would be able to hear this noise. And it sounded like a train was rushing on the tracks on each side of my head, like passing me by, like a cha-chung, 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 cha-chung. And then that repeated itself a couple of times. And I kept hearing this whirling mass, the sounds of this whirling mass around my head, as almost as if it was like some sort of tornado that was coming in from a different realm. And the noises were loud and they woke me up. And when I woke up, I tried to move, but I was frozen. And then I started hearing this buzzing sound. And it felt like my spirit started to separate from my body, starting with my head. So I was laying on my futon and my spirit was separating from my head first, through my chest and my shoulders, and so on and so forth. And the buzzing sound continued. It felt like I was vibrating, like I was a cell phone on vibrate. Finally, my spirit fully released from my body and I was hovering above the ceiling. and it was a very peaceful, exhilarating feeling. And I was very happy and content. I kind of felt like my consciousness and awareness were being expanded at the same time. And then I realized, oh, I'm having a near-death experience.
Can you pause for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, just a couple of questions. So first,
Yeah.
you had a very specific memory of the time. I think you said 1:41.
It was at 4:51 in the morning.
4:51. So how did you know that specific time? Did you look at what point did you look at a clock, or
it after I came back to my body?
So after you came back, you looked at a clock and you saw 4:51
on my cell phone. Yeah, I
on your cell phone.
Because what happened was, I was hovering above my body by the ceiling, and it was.
I'm sorry. We'll go back to that. I didn't want to, because I was thinking you checked it before him, but so we'll come back to that because I already stopped you at that part of the story. Sorry, so I'll let you pick up before you're at the ceiling, and then but just one more question before then you can continue from where you're up at the ceiling. When you're up at the ceiling, did you look down and see your body, or not?
Honestly, I wasn't interested in it. it was like, it was just like not a part of me anymore. And it wasn't even,
Right.
a lot of people, I guess when a lot of people have these experiences, they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, I saw my body and it was weird because I didn't even know I looked different than I did in the mirror. And it was almost like I didn't recognize myself at first because it was just odd. But when I was doing it, I had no interest in my body. Like it was just like, oh, whatever. Like I was so enamored and so like fixated on what I had become, because now I was just this energy that was just floating above, my body up by the ceiling. And there was no fear. I felt safe. Um, and it was just a really, beautiful experience. And I realized, and I felt like I was an energy. And then I realized at that moment that every person on this earth is, has that same energy within them. And it doesn't matter who you are, what your job is, or what what your sexuality is, or anything like that, or your race, anything. It's just everybody has this beautiful light inside of them. And I realized, I'm like, yeah, everyone deserves respect because we have this light inside. And I just thought it was cool. And I could see, I didn't have to turn around to see, I could see from different perspectives all at once. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, what do I do now? And then as soon as I had that thought, the opening of a tunnel appeared in the window of my living room, right above where I had this table with all these pictures lined up. And I thought, okay, I'm supposed to go in that tunnel. I heard about this. And then
Was it outside the window?
it was sort of like, okay, if you just imagine a window, just it wasn't outside, it just kind of appeared within the window. Like it just kind of opened up like this dark tunnel, this dark void that just kind of appeared, and it kind of sucked me in. And as soon as I was sucked in a little bit, I had this overwhelming feeling of not feeling ready. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm not ready for this yet. I got way too much work to do. I can't go. And then as soon as I had that thought, I slammed back into my body and jolted up. And that's when I grabbed my cell phone, because I wanted to see, I'm like, these buzzing noises. I felt like a cell phone on vibrate. Did somebody call in the middle of the night? That would make me think, how like when you're dreaming or something and you hear a noise and it kind of infiltrates your dream a little bit. I thought maybe that was it, because I'm just like, that was not a dream though. That's the thing, that whatever I just went through was not a dream. Like I've had dreams before and this was not it. So I grabbed my cell phone and I looked at the time and it was at 4:51 in the morning. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm like, how did I just have this experience? Like what happened? And right when I thought, and I felt like in a way I was still there, in the sense that I could just pick up on people's energies real well, because what happened was outside my front door, I could hear at least 2 or 3 people, the sounds of shuffling feet. And next thing you know, I hear something hit my front door, and it made this snap, crackle, and pop sound like an explosive device that didn't quite detonate properly, like fireworks. Like some people would say it would sound like a gun, but the thing was, I don't think it was a gun because it didn't leave bullet holes. It just left a mark on my front door. But I sensed the energies of the people outside throwing this thing at my door, and they were terrified. And it was kind of ironic because I'm sitting here on my bed all blissed out from this experience that I just had, and here the people who are coming, outside with, throwing stuff at my door to make my house blow up, they were scared shitless. And I just thought that was really ironic. And then I heard them take off down the driveway. I could hear the sounds of feet shuffling, and then they took off down the driveway. And I sat there and I thought, oh my God, someone just tried to kill us. And I'm just like, who was it? I'm like, was that Derek? I'm like, that's kind of extreme for somebody who, this is an extreme reaction for somebody whose feelings aren't being reciprocated by a dancer. And I kind of froze. I didn't know what to do. A lot of people would think that the obvious choice would be to call the police. But at that time, I just had this overwhelming feeling, this sort of voice speaking to me, telling me, don't call the cops. And I thought to myself, yeah, because if I call the cop, and then if I call the cops, it's like when you're a dancer and a, when it's a domestic violence situation, a lot of times when the cops come over, they're not really helpful in the sense that they'll either blame you for the incident, or you don't know if you're getting some dirty cop who's going to try to, assault you in some way. My whole thing is that I figured, I'm like, whoever just was here and just tried to kill us is probably also watching us right now. So if I call the cops right now and they come over, those people who just tried to off us are going to know that I know. So I thought to myself, okay, well.
So a couple of questions. Did this wake up your son, any of this, when this happened? Did he come out of the room or?
No, not yet. I went in there to check on him and he was still sleeping.
Okay.
And I just let him be, because I was like, I don't want him, to get scared or anything.
And
So
when we talked on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it didn't wake him up. He was still asleep.
And when we talked on the phone, you mentioned a couple of things. One was, you mentioned that I was asking how you knew some of this information. And I think the way you explained it to me was that even after you had returned to your body, there was still a light presence in the room. And you described a trillion voices, is the way you described it, within this light presence, and that you were almost being downloaded some information from that. Did I misunderstand that, or is that still part of the story? Or
oh yeah, I get Saturday, April 8th was the day. Well, that morning was the morning when they came to try to murder me. But on Sunday, April 9th, when I woke up that morning, I saw that a brilliant white light appear to me in my living room. And it was funny because the night before I slept with my contacts in, because I was, kind of concerned that they might come back. And if they did, I would at least have my eyesight in. But I woke up Sunday, April 9th, and I woke up to this beautiful bright white light in my living room. And it was cool.
but
And
this was the next day, like
this was
24
the
hours
next
later?
day. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was kind of funny that it appeared 24 hours later, because I remember the night, the day before, I thought, usually when you have a near-death experience, you leave your body and you see a tunnel, but I didn't see a light. Like, where was it? Like, why didn't I see one? And then I thought, I don't know if God's mad at me for being a dancer or something or what, but it's just kind of funny that I had that thought, because sure enough, when I woke up the next day, boom, there it was in my living room when I woke up. So, and it was a beautiful, bright white light. Like you said, it spoke to me. It had one voice made up of millions and billions and trillions of voices. And they were both male and female from like all different cultures, all different walks of life. It was just this beautiful, omniscient, omnipotent energy vortex that just sort of opened up out of nowhere and just started communicating with me in a way that was telepathic. And there was really no room for miscommunication or anything like that. It was just very direct. And it told me a lot of things that were difficult for me to hear, but important for me to know. A lot of it pertained to the first thing that the light talked to me about was my childhood, about some incidents that happened there. And this is where I feel like I should maybe issue a trigger warning for anybody who's been sexually assaulted. You might want to take a minute to leave the room while I discuss this, because it can be triggering for some people. But the first thing the light told me was about my family and how my father was a very violent man. And he sexually assaulted me and my older sister, who ran away from home when I was 4. And when that happened a long time ago, there was really no explanation given to me as far as why, because I was only 4. But when I was older, my mother explained that to me. I think I was in my early 20s. I was on home from a college break, and she explained to me, oh, your older sister ran away from home because she was a bad person. She accused your father of, raping her and doing all these horrible things to her. And she's a home wrecker, and so on and so forth. And, she's bad. And I don't need to, my mother specifically said that she doesn't need to see my big sister again. And I just thought that was really kind of odd, but now when I'm seeing this light in my living room, God's telling me that's why your older sister ran away, is because your father is a rapist. And I thought about it and then I realized that my mother was horrible for calling my older sister a homewrecker when she was not her fault. It was not my big sister's fault. It was my father's fault. And my mother refused. She defended the abuser, basically, and demonized the kids who were getting assaulted. So that was really a rude awakening for me. But at least I
And
knew
you
now
didn't
the
know
truth.
this until you had this kind of awakening when the next day when the light was in the room.
I think what happened was I knew that I was being abused as I grew up, but I was in a survival mode where you just put your blinders on and you're in denial because that's the only way you can cope with the whole situation. And it was when God told me this, I really appreciated it because I realized that I'm like, God, the only way to heal from this whole thing is to know about it and to really face it and accept it as reality, as difficult as it was, because we can't heal from what we can't confront. So it meant a lot to me that God revealed this truth, and he sort of took off the blinders, and finally I was seeing my life for what it really was instead of like how I wished it was, if that makes any sense. It's a survival tactic, I realized. And then God told me, I guess another reason why I didn't call the cops the day before is because I wasn't sure who to call the cops on. Well, God told me, he says, the way you passed away was Derek and the girls were hired by Ken's wife to get you out of the club so that they could kill you and your son. And I thought, whoa, wait a second, Ken's wife? And it turned out that Ken, the man I had been dating from the club, did not tell, the one who told me he was divorced, he was still actually legally married, even though he was out of the house. He was still married, and he didn't tell me that. And God told me, well, Ken didn't want to lose you. He's in love with you. He just didn't want to lose you. So all this bad news was given to me, but then God switched gears and he said, you were to take the story of your life and create a Hollywood movie. And he told me who the director and producer would be. And I'm really stoked because it's my favorite one ever. and God said, you quit I used to be a smoker, drinker, and do a lot of drugs growing up and in college. And then once my son came along, I quit everything so that I could have my wits about me to be a good mom. Because I remember growing up with my parents, they were alcoholics and did drugs, and I didn't want to put my kid through that. So God told me, well, because you chose to respect your son's life and because you stopped drinking and drugging and smoking and all that, I'm going to allow your dream to come true. And I really appreciated the fact that that God gave me the bad news first and the good news last. And then I think, is there anything else he told? Oh yeah, he told me it was going to be a history making film, and it was going to do well, and that the purpose of my life is to teach respect to those, specifically to those who hurt children, who go around, these child molesters and rapists. It's my purpose in life to come here and say, the energy, the actions and the energy that you put out there is what is going to come back to you. So please make sure you're loving and respectful to people, and you're not going to have an issue, especially on the other side.
Are your parents still alive?
No, my mom passed away in 2009 and my father 2017. They both died of cancer. So
what was your relationship with them after 2006 and the incident? Did you still have connections with them, or?
Well, I started once I got this information, once it became very clear to me, I realized that I had to start going. There were other family members that I had who were abusive that I started going no contact on as soon as 2006. And then I started drifting away and limiting my contact more and more. And my mother actually noticed, and she said, "You're divorcing the family." And I didn't want to say anything because I know if I did, it's just, when you come forward and call out abuse, they'll manipulate things to make you look like the bad guy. So I kept my mouth shut. And then, my mother passed away, and she actually, right before she died, she apologized for the way she treated me. And she said, "I'm really sorry you have a family who disappoints you so much." And that was her way of apologizing, at least. So
How about your older sister? Are you in touch
my
with
older
her?
my older sister, I haven't seen since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I actually did find one of her friends reached out to me a couple years ago online.
Mhm.
So I found her friend on Facebook. The thing is, I can't just Facebook my older sister I haven't seen in 40 some years, because that would seriously freak her out, I think. And, she went through a lot, and she probably has a lot of trust issues. So she might need some time before wanting to see me again, which I completely understand, because, in her mind, she might think, "Oh God, is this family coming back to abuse me?" And that's a very valid and understandable thought. So I did
Or,
reach
or you
out to
might be
my
able to
sister's friend, but I haven't heard back.
you might be able to help her with, healing based on your own experiences and your story and everything you've been through.
If anything, I would want my older sister to know. My older sister, what happened was, she right before she ran away from home, she was getting in trouble for shoplifting when she was a teenager, about 15 years old. I remember her coming home in police cars, and she got arrested for shoplifting and stuff. And my mom had her go to a therapist. And when my sister told the therapist about what my father was doing. And my older sister and my father got into a major fight, and she was calling him out on, his bad behavior, and she threatened to run away. And when she did that, my father grabbed one of his guns, and he held all of us at gunpoint and said, "If you run away, you're all going to get the gun." And so after that incident, my older sister went back to the therapist and told her what happened. And then the therapist removed her from our home. She was an adopted kid. Um, so she'd already been through one abusive family, and now she's going through another abusive family, the poor girl. And the therapist removed her from our family, and pretty much had to put her in a group home for girls as she waited. And then my parents had a court hearing, but my older sister ran away before the hearing even had a chance to take place, because she just didn't want to have anything to do with our family anymore, and who could blame her? So
So she ran
that's
away from the group home.
she ran away from the group home, yeah, right before my parents' custody hearing was to take place. And the last time I saw her, it was after that. It was probably when I was about 5. I was in kindergarten. I just started kindergarten. And I was playing at a neighbor's house, and she came up to me and she was crying. And I remember her holding me and hugging me, and she was saying, "You're so precious, and just remember, I always love you." And I was like, "I love you too." And then that was it. That was the last time I saw her. And that was probably in 1979. So I haven't seen her since, but I'm hoping that, I wrote a book about the experience that I had. And I'm hoping that, at some point she'll see the book and she'll know, in this book, I just wanted to write it to clear her name to everybody, that, this older sister of mine tried to save us, and she was a hero. She told the truth about my father, and she was demonized for it by my family, and she didn't deserve that. And I want the whole world to know what a good person she is, and how she stood up and she protected her siblings against these parents of ours.
Well, hopefully you can reach out to her at some point and see, if you can reconnect.
I hope
I
so.
think
I
it'd
mean,
be
it'd be
a good experience for both of you,
I hope so. I'd love for her to know that, she still has family in me, even though she still has family in me, and I'm always going to consider her my big sister. And I really appreciate her stepping up and standing up to the bullies who are, my family, our family.
Now, to go back to the story, you mentioned to me that your son experienced something similar. Tell me more about that, and tell me how you found when he first told you about it.
Well, I think it was on April 8th, 2006. It was maybe like hours after I had my out of body experience. I asked my son, I said, did you have any dreams last night or anything? And he said, yeah, I had a dream that I was floating above my bed. And he said that, you know, um, he was saying that, and I said, "Oh, were you scared?" He's like, "No, I wasn't scared. I was just floating above my bed." And I'm like, "So how did you get back into your body?" He's like, "I just floated back down." So and the funny thing was is that the next morning, when after I saw the light on April 9th, and after the light faded, a little while afterwards, my son came out of his bedroom, and he was dancing and smiling and, you know, like dancing around and just, you know, being, and I could tell by his whole energy that something, you know, that the light not only, you know, affected me, but the light also affected him as well. Because I think for a while, you know, we'd all gone through a hard time when with the, you know, me separating from his father, and you know, the move and everything, and I think it was hard on him. But after the light faded, and, you know, my son came out of the room, and it looked like his whole energy was different. Like he was completely healed and he was better. And I was just so relieved to see that, because I know he was having a hard time. So, and this light that faded, I mean, the effects that it had on us were amazing. Because I remember, you know, I remember after the light faded, I went into my bathroom, because I have to go through my son's room to go to the bathroom. So I went to my son's room to check on him, and he was still asleep. And then I went to use the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I swear to you, like I looked literally like I was 10 years younger. Like I had some sort of, I call it the miracle makeover. Like if I, you know, I didn't realize, I was only 32, but I didn't realize how much I had aged since my early 20s, since, you know, since then. But I'm looking in the mirror, and I don't have, like, you know, I don't have my single mom under eye bags or wrinkles or anything. I was like completely just had this like energy, like, you know, coming out of me. And the same thing happened to my son too. Like whatever happened, we were healed from it. And I noticed the weeks following the event, it was really cool, because I had a caffeine addiction that was really bad for me. I mean, I was drinking a lot of caffeine, and then I was online a lot, and those addictions were gone. I didn't need caffeine anymore, because I felt so calm and so energized. And you know, I opened up the front door and I was trying to look for pieces of explosive device at one point, because I wanted to see if there was any evidence left behind. And I looked at my neighbor's lemon tree, and I could see these energy fields emanating from the lemon tree, and I could sense the tree's intelligence and feelings and whatnot. And ever since then, I mean, I've always liked being out in nature and stuff, but then I understood how important it is for people, especially kids, to be out in nature a lot, because we get a lot of energy from trees and plants and flowers and whatnot. So, and just the shifts that I saw, you know, as a result of having this light come in and heal us from, you know, from all the traumas that we'd experienced in our lives. I
Did
mean,
that perception, how long did that last? Do you still have any of it now, or did it fade over time? Or
well, the miracle makeover did not unfortunately last as long as I wanted it to. That, I mean, I went to work after that, and people noticed. They're like, "Yeah, you look well rested. Did you get some work done or something?" And I'm just like, "Oh, thanks." You know, I
but I mean, the
guess
perception part, like where you could perceive the energy sources and the intelligence of other forms of life, you know, like the lemon tree.
I would say
You,
like maybe for a couple months.
and it just slowly kind of faded off.
Yeah, it slowly kind of tapered off. But see, even now, I still get sort of like these energetic downloads. Um, my intuition is a lot more amplified now, and I can read people better. It's just a matter of paying attention, you know, to things. Because the one thing I learned from this whole experience is that life is a lot more scary, or life is a lot more terrifying than death is. And in life, that there are a lot of illusions, and there are a lot of things beneath the surface that we don't always see. It's not, you know, things are not obvious in life as they are in death. In life, you have people, you know, you have wolves in sheep's clothing. But when I died, I went to a spiritual state. I was in a spiritual state where, there were no wolves in sheep's clothing. If there was a wolf, you would see it as a wolf right away. And if there was a sheep, there was no trickery or nonsense or BS. And that's what made heaven so heavenly, was that there was no questioning it. You could just relax, and if you were a cool person, you would, gravitate to a realm where you were with like people. You wouldn't, if you're a good-hearted person, you're not going to go to the narcissistic realm after life's over with, So that was really cool to learn.
Does your son remember any of what happened of floating up to the ceiling? I know he was only 6, so he might not remember anything, but
he was actually, I think, 4.5 at the time.
So even younger. So I mean, but it is possible for some people to remember things. I can remember nothing interesting, but certain things from when I was actually I was only 3 when we moved out of our first house, and I do remember that kind of moment. But
yeah.
Does he remember anything?
I think he remembers that we call it a dream for him because I don't want to freak him out, but he remembers it. I don't think he knows, because I try to shield him from how it happened. I don't think he knows exactly how it happened, but he's a really smart, intuitive kid too. So it's like, I don't think he knows exactly what happened, but he remembers when it happened. Yeah.
So he hasn't read your book?
No.
Yeah.
Not yet anyway.
So maybe he'll read your book or see this interview, and then he might have a reaction to it, like, oh, that explains what happened, or be curious what he remembers.
Right. Yeah. Well, he knows that, it was a difficult time. Yeah. There was a lot I had to shield him from. So
now, when I talked to you on the phone the other day, I mentioned this. Now, I'm not someone that believes in alien abductions, even though our channel is for the unexplained. I don't rule anything out. Anything is possible in life, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've never been into the phenomena, but we all have heard certain bits and pieces here and there over time, or at least I have anyways, listening to certain TV shows or something like that. And so it seemed to me to sound similar to some of these abduction experiences, So, and I mentioned that to you, and I think your reaction was you never really even thought about something like that, right?
No, I wasn't really under the impression that it was an alien abduction per se, because I remember when I was hovering above my futon, my first thought was, oh my God, I'm having a near-death experience. Oh, how cool is this? Wow.
Right.
So I think I just intuitively knew that when you go through something like that, there's no question about what you're going through. You just know, like when you die, you're totally aware of dying. You totally know what's going on. It's not like, the only thing I have to say though about the out of body experience is right when you're leaving your body, and this might be the only uncomfortable part. First, it wasn't uncomfortable for me, but a lot of people get kind of like scared at the loss of control. When you leave your body and you have no more control over it anymore, it's best just to go with the flow and relax. Because if you fight it, it's going to be, you're going to realize you can't stop whatever's happening. So you might as well just go with it. But some people, they seem to they get really tripped out over the loss of control. Because in that moment, they realize there's a force larger than we are, and there's nothing that we can do to stop it. But I forget where I was going with that.
Oh, that's okay. Because the thing is with a near-death experience, my understanding of it would be normally your body has to have come from some physical harm, or perhaps you had a heart attack or something, but your body you're dying. That's why it's a near-death experience. But you didn't come into any harm. I know there were maybe people that wished you harm in the hallway, but they had not actually got through the door, so they hadn't attacked you. So your experience is a little bit different than what I would see for a normal near-death experience, where someone's in a car accident, or like I said, or they have a heart attack, or they're dying on the operating room table, or something like that.
Right.
So that was it struck me as there was something different about yours. And so after we talked on the phone, I decided to go back and just do some research, just quick research on alien abductions. And so, and I don't mean for this to question your experience at all. So I hope you don't take it that way, but it was interesting. So for instance, this was one account. Here's what happened. I went to bed and went to sleep at 11 p.m. I woke up and opened my eyes with the perception of my face being bathed in light, which is different than seeing a bright flash. This woke me up totally, and I lay there in the dark with my eyes open for a few seconds, and then suddenly a bright spot type light shined in the corner of my bedroom near the closed door. It was about 3 feet in diameter, down low on the floor, in a part of the wall where I have some books stacked up. There was no visible beam of light, only the part of the room being illuminated by the light. My blinds were completely closed, and there was no way that light could from the outside. That was one. And then there was another one. I looked up, there's a kind of a famous guy. He had been a writer for years. His name is Whitley Strieber. I'm not sure if have you heard of the name Whitley Strieber?
I haven't, no.
I used to, years ago, coming home from work late when I was younger, there was a show on called Coast to Coast AM. And maybe that's where we first got the inspiration to do a channel like this. He was a regular kind of guest or co-host on the show, or fill-in host. And he wrote a book on alien abduction. He went through an experience, what he called an alien abduction. He was already a successful writer at the point when he went through it. But these are kind of his. So in his case, the big difference was, now he saw beings in his room, and you didn't see anything like that.
No.
But there were some other things that were a little bit common. They floated him out of his bed. They took him to the window, and there was a bright light. All right. So as part of this process, at one point, there was a big pow in front of him, an explosion that was also heard by others in the house later on. So there were, I guess, witnesses to the event. But he recalled that while he was fully awake at that stage, that he and his house guests, it doesn't really make sense. But anyways, there was a bang that was kind of similar to what you experienced at the door.
Right. Yeah.
And then another thing too, a female voice that he interpreted as alien told him more than once, "You are our chosen one." And by that, what he meant, or what he interpreted, was he was meant to tell that story.
Right.
And so I think that's when he first wrote his book Witness, which may have even been made into a movie. But so I don't know. So those aren't exactly the same as yours, but you had, in your case, you did have the loud bang, you did have the floating up to the ceiling, and you did have a sense of that you were supposed to do something, and a mission to tell your story.
Right,
So
my vocation.
Yeah. So those are three things that were in. Now, it's very possible that what he thinks was an alien experience was actually an experience of God or something else, right? So I'm not trying to get you to reinterpret, your version of events, but I just found it curious.
The one question I would have for him is, did he leave his physical body, or did his physical body, was his physical body going with him as he was dealing?
From his experience, he was floated from his bed out through his house and into the yard, and I think eventually he woke up in the yard. I think
so his physical body went with him.
Yes, he did. Okay. He did not consider his to be an outer body experience. He considered his experience to be floated. But again, the mind is trying to interpret events that are happening, and that's why I asked you if you looked down on your body on the couch, and you didn't do that. So it seems to me it's possible that you floated up and you actually didn't leave your body. But I know you described the feeling of leaving your body, so I'm not trying.
Oh, I was out. Yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't look down and see your body. So it's just possible that there are different ways to interpret a very unusual experience.
I'm just wondering, I guess with an alien abduction, I would think that they would take your physical body along with the rest of you. But with a near-death experience, your spirit actually separates from your body, and your spirit is separate from the physical body. And yeah, I just didn't really have any interest in looking at it. I mean, because
No,
I
I
was,
know. And another aspect of your story was being floated towards the window where
yeah,
the tunnel was either, I think the first impression you gave me was that it was right outside your window. But the impression now is maybe that it was more like connected to the window, like that was where the line was. But it is still similar to the idea of a craft outside the window. You're moving towards a circular thing that is lit up. And again, I'm not a believer in abductions. So I'm not someone that's trying to convince you that this is what happened. I'm not saying that I think it's what happened. I don't really understand why aliens would come here just to float us up to their craft. It's never made sense to me. But I just was struck when you were telling me this as to how many similar aspects of the story are to some of these stories that I just heard, driving home from work back in the day, listening to Coast to Coast AM. There was a lot in common, just knowing too that whenever you go through something traumatic, the human memory is so fallible that you're only going to remember bits and pieces, and then you create this narrative in your mind as to what happened. Clearly something
right.
happened to you. So I just curious if there's other possible interpretations for what happened, but
I know that I think when you're experiencing a traumatic event, I think what happened to me when I was actually sexually assaulted when I was a kid. I had to be about 12, 13 years old when it started happening, or it might have happened sooner, I'm not sure, but I don't remember it. That's why God had to tell me about it. And after I saw the light and after the light faded, I kind of sat down on my sofa after getting back from the bathroom, realizing that I had been made over, I had this blast of energy. My mind sort of opened up and rolled back to my childhood, and I was remembering all these things. And I do remember my father acting inappropriately, but I don't remember the actual, assaults. He trafficked me to two of his friends, and it's really weird because I don't, I only have I have no memory of it. But I think what happens there, but I do have in my diary when I was growing up that I wrote about these dates that I was going out with this one guy that my father had me seeing, and I don't remember any of it. And I think what happens is when you have a traumatic experience like that is I probably was lifted out of my body, and your body, you dissociate, you disconnect physically.
yes.
And you're not present anymore, and that's that's you do that for your survival. But as far as the alien abduction thing, I didn't see any UFOs or any spaceships. I didn't see any like physical beings. The only thing I saw was that light being appearing to me, and I just intuitively knew that it was like a heavenly being or the light of God. I like to call it God or goddess because the voices speaking to me were both male and female, and I just call it God / goddess just for accuracy's sake. But I didn't see any aliens. I didn't see any other light beings or any little green men or any spaceships or anything like that. It just all I did was I was sleeping. I buzzed out of my body. I hovered by the ceiling. I almost went into a tunnel that appeared in the window. And then I wasn't ready. So I came back, and then God's light came to me a day later and pretty much told me the truth about my life and made everything very clear about what happened. And he's like, you're to take this. See, it really made me realize how much God was my best friend, because for one thing, he protected me when I was getting, attacked. And for all the times that I was attacked, I don't remember because, who wants to think about those things, so your mind automatically pushes everything out. But it really made me realize how much God is my best friend, because he protected me from all of that. And he intervened before any physical damage could be done to us or our property. And he also he knew I would be very angry upon hearing about all this information, because I had been subscribing all my life to this false reality that my parents created. And here comes God telling me the truth. And I really appreciated the fact that God gave me an outlet. He told me, when he said your story, take the story of your life and create a Hollywood movie. And it's also to share my story through writing. So that's why I wrote the book. But I really appreciate the fact that he gave me an outlet, some sort of creative outlet where I could rebuild my life and get my anger out in a healthy way. And I'm happy to have this, because if I didn't have this, I know that my anger could come out in a really negative way. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. Because I really don't want to be, I don't want to be sucked down by the negativity that's happened in my life. I want to take what happened to me. And the goal is to, it's basically to take the bricks that people throw at you and build your life with it. You know,
I
take
have a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, God, likes, God seems to be very pleased when we can take the crap hands that we've been dealt and turn it into something positive that would actually, maybe help people, at least, make them realize that they're not alone. And, a lot of people out there are survivors of narcissistic abuse, like I was. And just to let them know that it's not their fault. If a narcissist hurts you or attacks you, it's not your fault. And
So I
that
have
there
a,
is God who loves you.
I have a question, and before I ask it, I mean, I have to make sure I'm asking it in a sensitive way.
Sure.
But it does, your explanation, it does actually also offer another possible explanation for some of what happened too, where because you had developed a habit, as people in your situation do when they're abuse victims, of being able to kind of go to another place, right?
Right.
Mentally, so that you're not there in the present experiencing the horrible thing that's happening. And it does, if one, it is possible that if someone was going to develop an ability to leave their body in some way, you might have
Mhm.
actually developed that through those experiences, or a heightened sensitivity even, to danger. And so if you sensed that danger that was coming outside in your hallway intuitively while you were asleep, part of you sensed it, and you began that process of going to another place, just like you had just automatically done when you were younger. But I'm just throwing that out there, and you can respond to it if you want. But I wanted to ask the question. This is the one I have to be a little bit sensitive about, but I think you kind of I think I can guess what your answer will be. So the question is this: if God was there to protect you on that night in 2006,
Mhm.
why didn't he protect you all those other times when you were a child being abused?
Um, I think it has to do with my life's purpose. And what happens is, when you come to this earth, before you come to this earth, you have you make soul contracts with people. And I actually realized that, I agreed to have this family, and I agreed to know these people and you go through these things as a way to help you become stronger and a more developed soul. And I think that's a good question. But the thing is, I think it was the fact that I don't remember any of it is God's way of protecting me. And that night, when those folks were outside of my home, they were outside in the driveway. There wasn't a hallway outside, it was a driveway. And they were in my driveway, and they threw something at my front door. And I think God intervened, because he knew I knew that Ken wasn't married. Or yeah, he knew I knew that Ken wasn't married, and he wanted to protect me, because he knew from my point of view, I was dating a guy who was divorced. And I had no intention of, stepping on anybody's toes or anything like that. And I guess God stepped in, because it was time for him to tell me the truth about what happened over the course of my life, so that this way I could fulfill my purpose. And that's to teach these jerks a lesson in respect. Like, you don't hurt kids, and you don't hurt my kid. You don't hurt me. We don't have a right to kill everybody if they piss us off. I had no intentions of hurting anyone. But I hope that
So you
answers the
believe that
question.
God kind of chooses when to step in to help
Oh yeah.
people, and when not to?
I
So,
saw. I could.
perhaps in your case, based on, he allowed the suffering because it was part of making you who you were meant to be, because you had a certain purpose, or so he
I
allowed that
think
suffering?
I have to go through it if I'm going to help other people. because I think through writing and, you know, creating these projects and whatnot, you know, it's part of my purpose to teach, you know, it's part of my purpose also to help survivors handle their pain and their anger in a way that's positive and healthy. Because I notice, like, I mean, I don't know what it is with all these school shooters and workplace shooters. These people, you know, they kind of trip out and they get upset and they hate their lives, they hate themselves, they want to make everybody else miserable, they're going to go out, they're going to shoot other people, and then there's a big debate over guns and so on and so forth. I feel that domestic abusers should not be allowed to own guns because of people like my father who threatens the family, and then that creates more traumatic, you know, stuff. But I think it's just you know, my whole wish is to, you know, for survivors who don't know what to do with their anger and pain, I'm hoping to show them what they can do with it so that they don't that they can wind up with a happier life. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom the whole way through. Like, they can take their traumas and their pain and their anger and they can use it to create something positive. And by doing that, by sharing our stories, we hold the abusers accountable.
And
And
where
I
did
think
you
that's really
where did you learn this idea about a soul contract? Was that something you already were thinking before the experience? Was that something you've learned later, or was that something that the information kind of came to you through your connection to the light being? Or
I think it was during the out of body experience when I was in energy. And then I realized because when I was in that state, it felt like I was returning to that state. And I looked back over my life and I could see how that my spiritual state that I was in was, I've always been that way, except when I came to earth to live my life. So it's like, before we were all born, we're all like that. You know, we're in the same state as we are after our lives. Only after our lives, we're transformed in a way as a result of living our lives. So I think it was, I didn't actually get shown that I had soul contracts with people, but this is just what I've heard in general. But I could see from being out of body as an energy, I could tell that I'd always been in energy. It's always been this way. And this lifetime on earth had just been a little blip on my screen. And what's really cool I wanted to share was that, we've all, none of us have any beginning and none of us have any end. And this lifetime that we're living now, it's like a little blip on the screen. Because we've all existed, I don't like using the word existed because that suggests like beginning and end. But there's always, just like God has no beginning and no end, same for our souls, because we're all a part of God.
Do we get one life, or do we come back again sometimes?
No, that's a really good question, because people have asked me about, did you see anything about reincarnation or anything like that? And I thought, well, I never, I don't want to deny that there's reincarnation, but I just can't answer it because during my experience, there was no like when I left my body, I didn't really have any sense of, okay, well, my fifth life is over now. So now I can do the, I might have lived more than one life, but as far as I know, like I'm only conscious of this one.
Mm-hmm. How did your soul contracts come to be chosen?
We choose what lessons we want to learn. We choose how we want to grow.
Yeah.
And it's just seems like the little mundane things that we do in life. Like, say if you went to a grocery store and you were just there to pick up whatever, and you just went there just because it was convenient, whatever. And then suddenly there was a shooting there. And then suddenly, you're teaming up with all these other fellow shoppers against the shooter, and you conquer someone, beats up the shooter and conquers him. That's a soul contract that you have with those people. Like it's just those events were all pre-planned before your life.
I see. Yeah. So it's kind of like I hear what you're saying. I've almost wondered that too.
Our interview, we actually planned this together before our lives.
Yeah,
this interview right now.
Or there's destined contacts, and you almost wonder, even quantum physicists suggest that there may be aspects of the universe that repeat. And it may take literally trillions of years, but they can even assign a probability to that 160 trillion years from now, this whole series of events will happen again. But if you're not awake for that 160 trillion years, it feels like nothing to you. So it's just a number. It's no more than a year, you know? So there are some strengths. So you do wonder if you're destined to kind of repeat certain connections with people, even though the play may come out a little bit differently the next time, but you're
Right.
still connected to some of those same beings. Like you said, we've met now. If there's another time, 100 trillion years from now, we may meet in some other format.
Right.
So
Now, I could see as far as I couldn't really see anything as far as reincarnation, because to me, reincarnation is taking multiple trips to Earth with the same soul. I could see how, like, you know, you have a pre-life, and then you have life, and then you have an afterlife. I could see that, but I couldn't see anything about reincarnation. A lot of people ask me about suicide, and I really can't answer that. Like, what if someone commits suicide? What then? And the only thing I can say is, I think what God does is he looks at everything like that on a case by case basis, because it's not everything so black and white. And I think God, you know, a person who commits suicide because they want to hurt somebody else is going to be treated a lot differently and wind up in a different place than somebody who commits suicide because they're in chronic physical pain and they just want to end it. Like, you know, there's different, you know, God considers everything. He knows everything. So yeah,
do
he's
you
the only one
believe,
who can really judge accurately.
so you
But,
believe the near-death experience could be different for somebody else? So
oh yeah,
so there could be a very negative, or do you believe in hell? Do you believe in
I didn't
punishment?
see a hell, but I do actually. I do feel like I said, like the energy that we give to others in this world is the energy that we're going to get back in the next world. And I found out what's funny is that after my father passed away, I had my son and I agreed that we did not want to go to this person's funeral because of what he did, because he was a violent man who hurt kids. And my son didn't. I mean, my father was in Pennsylvania. My son grew up in San Diego. They didn't really have much of a connection anyway, but my son was just like, I don't want to go to his funeral, not after what he did to you. And I'm just like, all right, well, we're not going to go. I didn't want to go because my father and he pretty much emotionally abused me till the day he died. And I just, and he even went so far as to exclude me from the will. And just doing, you know, because I had called him out on some bad behavior of his. And so, of course, when you call a narcissist out on their bad behavior, they do everything that they can to punish you and smear your name to other people and stuff. But, you know, we didn't go to the funeral, but I wanted to settle things up with him in my own way. And I wound up consulting with a medium. And the medium described to me, you know, after he died, she said, well, she says that he's an energy who has a lot of hard time. When he first came into the reading, he had a hard time breathing. She's like, he's very heavy in his breathing. And I'm like, okay. And to me, I thought, okay, well, he's probably not happy right now because he knows he's going to have to talk, you know, because that's what I want from this. And the medium told me, she's like, first of all, yeah, he's saying that he was not a nice person, and that now he's in a place where everything that he made you feel, he's feeling himself now. And it's not just you, it's your mother, it's your siblings, it's everybody he's ever dealt with. You know, if he hurt them, he's feeling that pain now firsthand, because his whole life he had no empathy for people and he was, you know, a dick. And now he's feeling it.
Okay, well, just one more question, and then I guess we can wrap things up, or you can add anything you want.
Okay.
And we'll talk. You mentioned before we go what your book is, so, and how people can find it. I just wanted to ask though, so you had basically two supernatural experiences. One, and they were separated by a day. The first one was the outer body experience, and the second one was the being of light that you saw the second day. Have you had anything else before or since then that you would describe as a supernatural experience?
I haven't, but the one thing I noticed is that my connection with God is such that I always see that my prayers get answered one way or another. And the other thing I have is I do receive intuitive downloads, and they'll hit me right in the gut. And anytime you get a gut feeling or an intuition, always listen to it, because those are everybody has a group of spirit guides or angels or guardian angels and so forth. And when you get a download or an intuition like that, or a gut feeling, those are your angels speaking with you. So always listen to what they say, even if what they say appears different from what you're seeing, because they're the ones who are protecting you. And sometimes we don't, like I said, there's so many illusions in this world, and that's what makes it so scary. So when you get a gut feeling, always listen to it, because those are your angels trying to watch your back.
Are you getting any downloads or gut feelings about me or this new project of the Our X Vault channel that we've launched? Are you getting any gut feelings on that?
I know that it's divinely inspired. So it should do well.
It should do well. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So, I mean, if it's coming from God, if you got this feeling that, hey, I'm going to do this, I think it'd be really cool. That's your spirit team telling you. We don't always realize when we're being guided. It's just like, we'll just think and be like, okay. But yeah, it just, the book I wrote wasn't, that was divinely inspired. I was told, hey, you're supposed to share this story, and, this is how you're going to serve your purpose. Any podcasts, what else? A lot of technologies are divinely inspired.
well, I can say that. So about 3 years ago, I was told that I had terminal cancer. And my reaction was, I told you, I mentioned I'm not a religious person. And I had this strange reaction of suddenly I was filled with energy, waking up early every day, working all day, going to bed late. Obviously, maybe part of that was trying to take my mind off things, but it was a positive energy. And then I almost even at times felt like a rush of like, all right, now I know I'm meant to do something, which I don't necessarily, before that I had never believed that I was, but I felt a sense of purpose that I was here still to do something, and I had to try to do it,
Yeah.
but I didn't, but that tended to fade after a while, because I set out to write a novel. I began a new novel at that time, finished it less than a year later, but was unable to get it published. So, kept trying, and I'm still trying now, but this project wasn't launched until 4 months ago, or 3 months ago, or something like that. So I don't know. I can't sit here and say now that I feel that there's some kind of reason or destiny or something I'm supposed to do. That feeling is kind of definitely waned, quite a bit. But that was my reaction after the diagnosis, and I felt like that, and it drove me to work hard and finish that book. Now I'm still driven hard to finish this project, and I'm hoping that we can get traffic. And my purpose in doing this project was, is if we could build an audience, then I have so many other stories in my mind that I want to tell, that if we could actually have an audience, you have a chance to get your stories out there. And that was my only purpose. So, and my thinking was I could bring a lot of other people on board, which we have brought in dozens of people that are interested in doing podcasts, and they may have their stories to tell. So that was kind of my whole, purpose with this. It's only been going on for a couple of weeks, so it's too early to tell if it'll succeed. We have to just keep kind of pushing and stay committed to it. But
I'm glad you're okay.
I feel great. I feel awesome, and thankful for modern science, which my medicine is a pill that I take, one
And that
pill
was
a day.
divinely inspired.
Perhaps. And it won't work forever, but it has now worked a year and a half longer than it tends to on average before the cancer adapts to it. So I'm hoping that I can get another couple of years out of it, and then by then they'll have the next thing. So or maybe, who knows? I mean, you could be that 1 in a million case where you get 7 years out of it, but in the meantime, keep working and try to get my story, not my own personal story, but get stories out, or help you get your story out, and maybe find some purpose in that way. But thank
Yeah.
you very much. Go ahead.
Thank
Oh yeah, let's
you.
talk about your book.
The book, it's called busting through to heaven by by Sedona Dawn. The full title is called Busting Through to Heaven, an exotic dancer's near-death experience by Sedona Dawn, and it's on Amazon Prime, or it's on Amazon, and I believe it's on Kindle and paperback.
How much is it on the Kindle?
I think it's $9.99 on Kindle and
$9.99. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
$14.95 on paperback. But
Have you written the screenplay yet?
you know what's funny is that I think it was right after my my near-death experience, I started working on a screenplay, and I had been working on it for a really long time, on and off. And I think finally I had to put it down for a little bit, because I figured, I'm like, it's going to take me a long time to make this a movie just by writing a screenplay. Maybe I should write a book. And then COVID happened, and it's kind of funny when you're facing a situation where you might not make it. That's when you kind of kick in a high gear and get try to get your work done. So I figured, I'm like, maybe a book would be really helpful for people if they. I talked to a lot of COVID survivors who actually had near-death experiences too, and they were all telling me about theirs. And they said, yeah, we're writing books too. So there are a lot of people who've had these experiences, way more than people realize, because a lot of us, are, we have a fear of sharing, because we have a fear that we're going to be perceived as crazy, or we won't be believed. So I really appreciate you believing my story. And that really means a lot, because it is a bit challenging to come forward with that, because you're always going to face the person, and you're always going to have the doubters, like, oh, that person saw a light, but they got tricked by the light. That was really Satan, and all this other garbage, that they try to gaslight and manipulate you into believing, something that happened to you didn't really happen. So it's just, yeah, no, it's just, yeah, it was definitely one of the most amazing experiences I ever went through. And I'm grateful that I went through it, even though I discovered things that weren't really particularly easy to hear. But yeah, a lot of survivors, they come back with these stories. There's way more people out there than we realize who've had them. And we're all sharing it, and it's like you said, it's really important that we come forward and share our stories, because that's always been a human tradition, really.
Well, thank you very much for sharing the story, and I wish you luck with the book and the screenplay, and with sharing it with anybody else that you can. And I hope you can reach out to your older sister. I think that would give some healing to both of you. But yes, I absolutely believe you're telling the truth. There may be other explanations for what happened. I don't know, but I feel very confident that you're not in any way deceiving any of us. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I don't think I could. I'd be too scared.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to face a backlash, but thank you so much for having me.